Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for some more legacy action. Today I'm going back to a deck that I really enjoyed playing quite recently, and that was the Hammertime deck. Essentially just putting Colossus Hammers onto creatures and bashing for a lot of damage super early on. So last time I played this deck I did alright. I think I went 3-2 and the list was pretty smooth. The games I lost were relatively small margins or getting womboed by a combo. So I've made a few little tweaks to the deck. So there were a few cards that I wasn't really convinced were that great, and I've swapped them for some more Sword of Fire and Ice. So now we have 3 Sword of Fire and Ice, which may seem like a lot, but if you have Sigarda's Aid or Pure Steel Paladin, then paying 3 mana to play and put this on a creature is just such a powerful effect. It just draws you into everything else you could possibly want. I just think it's a really good card because it lets you play a fair game a bit better. So if you're behind, a Sword of Fire and Ice can actually do a bit of work, whereas if you're getting these Cauldron Completes in your hand, you might not be able to put them into play and it's going to be a bit awkward. I also thought this was better than Net Assist, because Net Assist requires you to have a substantial board in order to get the power out of the Net Assist on it. So I figured this would just be a straight up better card that's going to have more power for a single piece of equipment. So this is what I've opted for today. So we're going to give this a go. The sideboard is exactly the same as before. I just want big bulk of cards to deal with each of the problems. So whether it's Storm, whether it's creatures I need to remove. This can also double up as creature removal, but it's there for things like Chalice. And then we have Graveyard Hate. So it's all pretty straightforward. And our aim is to try and put some hammers and make our creatures enormous. So if we can get some hammers on Ornithopters, that would be lovely. But we've got the Stoneforge backup plan of just getting a Cauldron, but then we can also just Sword of Fire and Ice with a Pure Steel Paladin in play, and that's a nice curve of 2 to 3, and then you get to bash for 6 and draw a card on turn 3, which seems alright. That seems like a legacy power level thing to do. Sure, it's not super womboing people, but we do have the ability to do that with Ornithopters and Colossus Hammer and Inkmoth Nexus. So I think that's about it. I'm just going to jump right into it and get going. So this is our opening hand. We have the ability to play a fairish game with Stoneforge Mystic, going and getting our Cauldron Complete, but then the rest of our hand doesn't really do anything because we need parts to make the Colossus Hammer work. Same with Ornithopter. So I think we can mulligan and get a 6-card hand that's just as good as this. So it's worth mulliganing to see if we can get a better hand as well. So this is, again, a fair hand, but it's a much better fair hand. We have a Jitte here, and we have the Urza Saga plan, so I think this hand is just great and we're going to keep it. What we're going to do is we're probably going to bottom one of the Esper Sentinels, so we make sure we have enough mana to use the Urza Saga and get some tokens out, because that's where we're going to probably get a lot of our path to winning this game from. Okay, so it looks like a Delver matchup here, which is probably fine. I think we can play this out into a Daze, because we have other things we need to be doing anyway. So if this eats a Daze, maybe the Stoneforge won't. Because they have a 1-drop threat, I think we can't afford to play against the curve and just give them the time. Yeah, so there's the Daze. So this sets them back another turn from playing Murktide, which is the scariest thing that their deck has in this matchup. So the Sigarda's Aid is probably more important than the Esper Sentinel because of the fact that we're a Colossus Hammer deck. So 3 card types in the graveyard now. Instant Sorcery Land. And there's the artifact. Sure, so they've got their guy online on turn 2. So if we play out the Urza Saga, there's a chance for getting wastelanded, but the fact is we're going to get the mana for the Stoneforge's turn. We can't afford to play behind the curve here and wait another turn, so I think we have to play the Stoneforge out and hope they don't have another Daze. So because we already have the Jitte, we can either get the Cauldron Complete or the Sword of Fire and Ice. I think the Sword of Fire and Ice is quite a nice grab here, actually. Or do we just want the Cauldron to race with? Because we can Cauldron and then put a Jitte on it. And then we'll play out this Ornithopter. So this way we can use a Stoneforge to put a creature, to put a equipment into play. And we can equip things to Stoneforge if we need to. So if the Stoneforge dies, you can place Sigarda's Aid into Jitte, equip it to the... Well, unfortunately the Ornithopter won't have any power, which is the only issue there. But it means when this pops, we can get the hammer out. I have to imagine they have a lightning bolt for our... Yeah, there we go. There it is. So this is showing an example where the Memnite is slightly better than the Ornithopter, which I've seen some Hammertime builds playing. And this is a really interesting situation here, because if we make a token here, we don't get to put the Sigarda's Aid in, so when this goes to find a hammer, it won't actually hammer anything. So I think we play out the Sigarda's Aid this turn, and then play out another Ornithopter to try and buff our artifact count. So this will give us 1, 2, 3, 4. But there will be a window where they can lightning bolt my guy. So the question here is, if I play the Jitte out now, I can make the Sagas big enough so they're not boltable, but then I have to pay 2 mana to equip this when the time comes. I think that is worth doing just to make sure that our big threat doesn't get bolted, because we can't afford to not have a creature with power here. We might as well equip this to one of these guys and hope they don't see that it needs to have power to do anything. So next turn we will make a construct token, and then we can put the hammer on the Ornithopter, or the... Okay, so they're just going to straight up bolt that. Okay, that's fine. That's one less lightning bolt for our face or for our as a Saga token. So this feels like a Murktide Regent turn from our opponent. Okay, they don't have it straight away unless they've got another land already. Okay, so they shuffled off the Ponder, so that's good for us. So they can attack, make a land, and play Murktide Regent would probably be the scariest thing they can do. They did not do that. That's good for us. We will activate this. Okay, so I have two choices here. We can either get the hammer and put it on the Ornithopter and just present it 2-turn clock, but they could have a lightning bolt for that. Or we can put it on the construct. But I think we're going to put it on the... Ornithopter here. If they want to burn a lightning bolt on an Ornithopter, that's not the end of the world when we have this backup plan and the Jitte already. So they can't Brazen Borrow it this turn either. Okay, so they're just going to scoop it up. Getting hammers in, nice. So for this sort of matchup, we want to be able to remove the few creatures they do present a threat with. There's also the potential that they have some sort of Null Rod type effect, which can be a bit of a problem if I'm trying to remove counters from Jitte, for example. Pure Steel Paladin here requires us to activate the equipment, whereas the Sigarda's Aid doesn't. So we can get around a Null Rod effect a little bit. Esper Sentinels are good, Mother of Ruins is a good. Pithing Needle here is only looking at shutting down Wasteland, but we can only fetch it off of as a Saga, which is after we would have wanted the Pithing Needle anyway, so I don't think the Pithing Needle is worth the slot here. Shadow Spear means we can just win off of a straight as a Saga game this matchup. The Jitte is very good here. Have all these Sword of Fire and Ices, which I like. In case they're bringing in Meltdowns, I think we trim on some of our 0-drop artifacts because they're just bad draws and we can just play a fairer game. The question is, do we trim out a Sword of Fire and Ice here? So we can trim a hammer, I think. And then we're looking at one more cut. So we could either just cut the March of Otherworldly Light altogether. I think we'll do that, actually. We just have the 4 Swords to Plowshares. Like, just the general setup of, like, this sort of white guy plan tends to beat Delver decks relatively well anyway. So I think we can just run this back like this, just with the 4 Swords to Plowshares. And obviously Sword of Fire and Ice is very good in this matchup because it protects from their deck, basically. Obviously they can still Brazen Borrow with the equipment, but I think I like this configuration. So this is a fair Urza's Saga hand, but it doesn't take much for it to pop off with the Sword of Fire and Ice. If they have Lightning Bolt Wasteland, then I'm going to be a little bit behind in this game, I think. This is also a hand that's weak to Meltdown because we have 2 Ancient Dens. So we're going to be leaning on the Urza's Saga if we keep this hand. I think this is fine though, because the power of Urza's Saga in this matchup is pretty decent as long as it doesn't get Wastelanded, which is famous last words really. If we send this back, we can get a similar 6-card hand really, because basically we're keeping it on the basis of Urza Saga, Mother of Runes. So I think we can mulligan, actually. Okay, so this hand requires an additional mana source to do anything, and it's very vulnerable to Wasteland. I don't think we can keep this one. So what does this hand do? We can play an Urza Saga game, but that's it. I don't think we're going to get a 4-card hand that's better, unfortunately. So this is not a good one. We might... can we get a 4-card hand that's better? What? Because we have to play around counter spells as well. I think we'll keep this and just play an Urza Saga game and see if it works. So if we're keeping the Urza Saga, we need to keep 2 Urza Saga and an Inkmoth Nexus. And we probably need to keep the Mox Opal just to have mana sources. So we keep a Source to Plowshares. I'm not happy with this hand. So maybe we should have kept the Mother of Runes one at the start. Our opponent didn't make a turn 1 threat, so that's very good for us. Play out the Inkmoth Nexus. We don't need to play out the Mox Opal this turn. We can use our Inkmoth Nexuses, turn them into creatures to turn on a Mox Opal for coloured mana. Our opponent not having a turn 1 threat or filter spell is very unusual. Okay, so they have a turn 2 Delver. And the Wasteland, sure. So this Wasteland should be hitting me, yeah. Because they've got something on the board, they just want to Wasteland me whenever they can. I'm going to play out this Mox Opal now as well. Okay, so we know they have a land or a creature in their hand. Or it could be the Bauble, but we'll find out by the end of the turn. So I'm guessing it was probably the Volcanic Islands. Okay, so now we can play out the Urza Saga. So we have the option of trying to attack for 1 with the Inkmoth Nexus, but if they Lightning Bolt it, then that's 1 less resource we have. So I think we're just going to wait till next turn and start activating the Saga. So this should flip this turn because they brainstormed. Okay, so I have a Ponder in hand. I assume we'll be seeing said Ponder this turn. Sure. A Bauble. Okay. As long as they don't deploy another threat this turn, that's okay for us. Okay, so they deployed another threat. Of course they did. Okay, so now we have to power out Urza Sagas and put a Shadow Spear on them. We get to be on the play for game 3 if we lose this one, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, so we're going to 10 this turn. Feel we're very far behind here. Okay, so they played another threat. This is very bad for us. Because this represents lethal with a Lightning Bolt next turn. But they haven't got a Lightning Bolt now. So if we untap 1, 2, this makes a counter. So if we draw a land, we didn't draw a land. Okay. I can say if we draw a land, then we could activate this for another token, and then get the Shadow Spear and equip. But we didn't draw the land, so I think we just have to add mana this turn. Equip Shadow Spear to this, and then we can. I could play out an Esper Sentinel to give us an additional point of damage here. So that'll take us up to 15. So we're taking 3, 6, 9, which would mean we'd be dead to double Lightning Bolt. If we kill this, then it's 3, 6. So we'd be on 4, 8. So we'd still be dead to 14 minus 6 is 8. So we wouldn't be dead to double Lightning Bolt. So if we kill the Dragon's Rage Channeler, we do not die to Lightning Bolt, to double Lightning Bolt. I think that means it's worth doing. We're going to activate the Inkmoth Nexus to get an additional point of damage in with our Construct token as well. Okay, so we don't want them to draw Murktide region is what we're hoping to avoid. Okay, so there's the Murktide region we didn't want them to have. It's a casual 6/6. We can probably make ourselves bigger than this with the Construct, but they do have an additional 6 power coming in as well. And this time they've got mana open, so it's a real doozy for us. So we can activate this and make a creature. Is that good enough? Taking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If we activate this, we get a creature. Alternatively, if we just tap it for mana, we make our guy bigger by playing multiple artifacts this turn. I think that's what we have to do. We're basically all in on this construct racing them. Okay, so if we get an Ornithopter here, it can block as well as pumping our guy. We could get a hammer and hope that we draw a Pure Steel Paladin, but we also would need additional white mana. I think we just get the Ornithopter here, because this can block a Murktide for a turn as well. So we have one colourless floating, so we can use that other colourless to play this Umezawa's Jitte out. And we can also play the Esper Sentinel, which will put our guy in as a 7/7. The other option here is playing the Mother of Runes, but I think making our guy bigger than the Murktide region is important. Now, the issue here is they have 2 red mana available, so they can Lightning Bolt down our 2 guys, shrink our construct token, and then put us in trouble. Okay, so just going to abrade our guy. How do we come back from this? It's going to be tricky. Okay, so we're dead now. Concede. Okay, so like we had a weak hand and it didn't work out, but we mulliganed to 5, and they had to have specifically a braid in that game, I think. So I think we can just run it back, and this time we're on the play, so we have a lot more raw power to jump at them. So let's submit. So this hand has a problem in that both of its lands are legendary lands, so we're going to mulligan this one. This hand doesn't do anything, so I have to mulligan again. This hand is fine if I can draw a creature. Isn't really where I want to be, but I think we have to keep this. Jitte and probably the Mox Opal here. And play this out on turn 1. So they can't daze this, they have to force will it if they want to. Okay, so we got 2 for 1 with that. That goes some way to undoing the mulligan. And this one is one that we can actually cast, which is one of the reasons why I included it in the deck. Obviously I need a body for it at some point. Okay, they're not starting on a threat, which is great for us. They pitched an Expressive Iteration to their Force of Negation, which is very good for us as well. Okay, so we have the Pure Steel Paladin into sort of Fire and Ice curve. The only thing we have to worry about here is if our opponent has a daze. If I play out the Pure Steel Paladin, they can Lightning Bolt it, or they can daze it here. If they daze it, then they're back another land, but I'm in top deck mode. I can't guarantee that I'm going to draw a land here. So I think we have to just test the daze here and play out the Pure Steel Paladin. We're not in a great spot, but we have to get a little bit lucky, I feel. Because if we curve this into this, then I think we win the game. But if we hold back on this and we don't hit a land, then we're in trouble. So they can crack the Scalding Tarn, get a Lightning Bolt and kill my guy in the Scry 1, or Surveyor 1, sorry. Yep, there we go. So that's the less than ideal scenario there. We can remove the Dragon's Rage Channeler, or we can hold the Source to Plowshares for the Murktide region that could be coming as early as next turn. Not in a great situation here. What does this do? Doesn't do anything. Is there any reason to hold it in our hand? I guess Meltdown is a thing. I think we have to pass. This is currently only a 1/1, so I don't think we need to Source to Plowshares. Obviously the selection they get is very, very strong, but the clock that this represents versus like a 6-power Murktide is very different. Okay, Expressive Iteration. I'm still looking for a creature or an artifact to put in their graveyard. Okay, so just the 1, that's fine. Can survive like this for a little bit longer. A Delver of Secrets, sure. So I don't know what the top card of the library is yet. I've drawn another Sword of Fire and Ice, which isn't really where I want to be. Again, the thing that these are replacing with things like Nettle Cyst, so that would be equally useless in this situation as well. Okay, Expressive Iteration. So surely they can find a Murktide region by now. The Delver not flipping was nice for us as well. Okay, so next turn their Delver of Secrets is going to flip. So with that information, do we want to Source to Plowshares the Delver of Secrets this turn to make sure that the creature doesn't bash us for 3 next turn? The chances of them making a Murktide region next turn are too high, so I think we have to a Colossus Hammer. So we can play this to turn on our Mox Opal, which isn't ideal. But it's fine if it's a pure steel paladin. So I think we will actually... Let's use this mana though. That's Colossus Hammer. This gives us 2 mana so we can source to plowshares around days. Now the awkward thing is we won't know if they're going to play a Murktide Regent until after combat, so we don't know if we should be hitting this or not. It's a case of they're probably going to cast Expressive Iteration first, but if they have a Murktide, they'll put it in their hand rather than in exile, I suspect. Delver of Secrets in the exile zone. Okay, so just casting that now. I think we get rid of one of the Delver of Secrets right now. Just buy us a bit more time. Okay, so if we draw a pure steel paladin, it can be a big guy that they can't deal with. And as a saga, it does make guys. So I think we'll play one of these out just to make sure that our creature is as big as possible when the time arrives. And we can machine gun down the Delver when we get to attack with it. However, if they find Delirium, we're in a bit of trouble. Okay, so 3 damage is certainly a lot better than it could have been. Okay, this looks like it's the Murktide turn. It's going to be a big one. An 8/8 Murktide. So we can play this, and we can make a token and equip it this turn, which is probably okay. How many artifacts? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can play it around Lightning Bolt here. Like, a Braid kills us anyway. Oh, that looks like what we're seeing here. They have an Abrade, sure, so we're dead. That's unfortunate. So our deck kind of failed on us there rather than anything our opponent did, which is unfortunate. Right, on to the next round. So we're on the play. We're not actually that exposed to Wasteland because of these Mox Opals, and we can make the Stoneforge Mystic on turn 1, if my maths holds. 1, 2, 3 artifacts, tap them. Yep, okay, we'll keep this. See if it's good. 1, 2, 3. I think it is right to get the Cauldra. So next time we get Cauldra and Mother of Runes into play. Ideally. Island. Okay, that doesn't remove my creature. Five haste, trample, first strike, etc., etc. on turn 2 is not bad. It's not actually the game plan of this deck necessarily, but it's not a bad B plan. Let's play this out. So the Mother of Runes gets the Force of Will. Okay, that means the Germ is probably getting Prismatic ended, would be my assumption. Just another island. I think we play out this Esper Sentinel before combat, in case they have any in-combat tricks. So they can play out a Snapcaster Mage here, but if they want to trade a Snapcaster for a Stoneforge, I don't think that's too bad, especially since the Stoneforge's already done its job. I could have attacked with Inkmoth Nexus as well to get poison in. I think threatening something with 2 mana is going to be more effective. Okay. So they're 1 damage off. Okay, and then next turn, 6 here. Flooded Strand. So they've cracked this, so they're dead on board, so they have to have a source to plowshares. Sure. Pure Steel Paladin off the top would be pretty nice. Mother of Runes is not a Pure Steel Paladin. So we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. So this is 7 to equip, so we're not a million miles away, to be honest. I should probably be attacking with my Inkmoth Nexus there, but I want to be able to play... It's unlikely that they're playing Days, but they could be on one of these unusual Delver variants with the Tundras. So if I activate the Inkmoth Nexus, I can't play the Mother of Runes around Days. Like, I don't think this is going to come down to a poison matchup, but maybe I've missed 2 points of poison that I could have had. So we'll see if that's important. Are they going to pay on their Narset? I don't think they can. Okay, so Sigarda's Aid is pretty useful here. So this is digging for a source to plowshares, would be my assumption. Okay, they didn't have it, so they're just going to die there. Excellent. So the poison didn't matter. I don't know if they had a day, so it might not have mattered either way. But that's the reason I went for, although the first one I think I did just miss but they had open mana. Anyway, let's go into sideboarding. So this is a control matchup. So what am I worried about from our control opponent? Honestly, I don't really think many of these things, like the only one that might have some use that I can think, like they could have targets for Leyline of the Void, so they could be trying to loop Shark Typhoon using the Hall of Heliod. They could have the Dragon, but I don't think it's worth boarding in these ley lines just for that. Same with all these. I didn't get the impression that they were a Hull Breacher deck. Obviously, the cards they played are still in Hull Breacher deck, so they could be, because Narset is just pretty standard in those decks anyway. So it's certainly a thing they could have, but our hand's basically going to be gone by then anyway. So I don't know if we're in the market for these otherworldly lights. We can always reappraise it if we go for a game 3. I think we just resubmit the same 60 and go for it. Like the deck list is quite lean in terms of all the bits doing their own little jobs. Although I'm thinking that maybe the third Sword of Fire and Ice could just be a fourth Mother of Runes, but we'll have a look at that later. So this hand requires another mana to do anything. So I could risk trying to draw a mana on my first draw step. I think we should just mulligan. It's just safer. This hand is a bit slow and doesn't have anything spectacular. And it doesn't have either the Stoneforge Mystic or the Pure Steel Paladin or even Sigarda's Aid. But I think we can play a Esper Sentinel Mother of Runes game and probably build up to Sword of Fire and Ice, which if we put on the Esper Sentinel was going to tax them heavily. This is one of the weakest hands I would keep, to be honest, but I think I will keep it. I think we bottom the Mox Opal here, because this way, if we do draw a Sigarda's Aid or Pure Steel Paladin, we have something to go with it. So there's 8 of those cards that can just turn this into a super wombo pretty immediately. Okay, so there's the Stoneforge. So we had 12 draws basically that would radically improve the quality of our hand. We also had Urza's Saga as a draw, which is another card that would dramatically improve it. I'm playing the Mother of Runes out first because they're a control deck, so they can just Esper Sentinel on 2 and not worry about it. Whereas if this is in play, they're not going to be able to remove the Esper Sentinel until they get rid of this first. Yep, there's a Prismatic Ending. So whatever I play there gets hit by that. So we play out the Inkmoth Nexus. So we can either play out the Stoneforge Mystic when they're on 5 cards, or we can play out an Esper Sentinel and hold 1 mana up. I think I'm in the mood to play the Stoneforge, because if this hits a Force of Will, that's going to be a lot of cards at their hand, and I don't think they have any 1 mana spells that are going to counter it here. So I think we play this one up. Get a 2 for 1 either way out of this. Sure. So we got to ponder out them. So that Force of Will is the only thing that can counter it, and it's always going to counter it. It's not like I can play around. Like, I don't think they're going to waste a counter spell on Esper Sentinel when they're already going to be looking at having 3 mana on the next turn. Okay, a Narset. Okay, Urza's Saga is a very good draw for us here. It means we can hit the Narset down to a 2. So if it activates, it dies. And then we can play out the Esper Sentinel. Since we've seen the Prismatic Ending, we know it's not a Delver deck of any description. It's just going to be a full-on blue-white control deck. Whether or not it's like Shark still or not, we'll have to see. But if they want to activate their Narset, they lose their Narset. Okay, they've just gone straight for it. Okay, let's have a Source of Plowshare. So they can just plow our guy away here. Or they can Teferi paying. Sure. So the Teferi can bounce my guy if it wants to. But then they'll die to the Inkmoth Nexus. Okay. Does mean that I'm not activating my Urza's Saga this turn, which is a shame. Well, that's a good one. I'm 1 mana off killing them. 1. Yeah, I need 1, 2, 3, 4 mana to kill them. Alright, so I think we activate this. And then we kill the Teferi. I think we play out the Esper Sentinel here again. We kind of need to get rid of that Source to Plowshare somehow. So next turn we can kill them, right? 1 artifact, 2 artifacts, 3 artifacts. Garda's Aid, get Mox Opal off of this, put the Colossus Hammer on our Inkmoth Nexus and swing for lethal poison. Obviously our opponent is a control deck, they might have a lot of things to say about that. Only one of the things I'll be doing here interacts with the stack in terms of counter spells, so that's good. But they have no reason to, I was saying they had no reason to tap their white source here. Monastery Mentor. Okay, so this is a bit awkward because you need an additional mana so that you can reactivate the Inkmoth Nexus and give it flying after it loses flying because of the Colossus Hammer. But if we draw a mana source here, which we'll see before our Urza's Saga pops, then we can still kill them in the air with lethal poison. We've found what their win condition is as well. We drew the mana source. Okay. This is going to be a cool turn, hopefully. Get Mox Opal. And play out this Saga. Not Sigarda's Aid. And we turn this into a creature. Then we play Colossus Hammer. And we equip it to this. And it loses Infect, and I use the Mox Opal to give it flying again. Sorry, it doesn't lose Infect, it loses flying. Excellent. That was one of the cool things this deck gets to do. And so we are 2-1-1 now, I think. Yeah, alright, going to another round. So this hand is alright. I have the Colossus Hammer combo. I have an Urza Saga to get more hammers. And I have an Esper Sentinel to sort of tide us over. This seems fine. Our opponent is a 60 card deck and they're on the play. This opening land to me suggests Prison, which is going to be a little bit awkward since we have a lot of cheap spells that we're trying to cast. Chance of the Void is a little bit annoying because it means we can't Colossus Hammer, but we still have the Urza Saga for that. We're just playing an honest game with basic lands here. I think we play out the... We're supposed to play the Urza Saga this turn, weren't we? I think we're just going to play the Stoneforge game here. So we can get the Sword of Fire and Ice, or we can get the Cauldron Complete. Cauldron Complete is going to be hard for a red deck to deal with. I think that's where we want to be. Yeah, I should have played out the Urza Saga. Obviously, I risk getting hit by a Blood Moon, but I think I should have played the Urza Saga out just so we can tick it up and get ready for the Pure Steel Paladin to put a hammer in. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay, that's going to be a little bit more of a problem. So the Cauldron is not going to do a great deal here. I'm 4 cards in hand. So, play this one out. So we can't Cauldron this turn. What we can do is we can Pure Steel Paladin. Oh no, we need Sigarda's Aid, but we can't cast Sigarda's Aid because of the Chalice. So we just have to attack and then play out the Pure Steel Paladin. So by the time the Urza Saga would have popped, the Ensnaring Bridge is in play anyway. Obviously I didn't know that, so it was still a misplay not to play the Urza Saga when I could have. So if for any reason they finish a turn with their hand still with a load of cards in, then we can put the Cauldron and get a nice bash for 5 off of it. Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Okay, Inkmoth Nexus. So this is probably going to take out my Pure Steel Paladin. Or it could just plus and force me to attack it with everything. Okay, so I just need to attack it with one thing. Right, it's either a Plains or an Ancient Den, I think, just in case we find a way of cheating Colossus Hammer in, which I don't think we actually can. Actually, yes, put Colossus Hammer in the bin. We have no way of putting Sigarda's Aid into play, which would be the one thing we could do, because we could use a Stoneforge to put a Colossus in at instant speed and then attach it to an Ornithopter. Which is a play we might have to look to do in the follow-up games to this. Okay, so we're getting another card off of the Chandra. So if this kills one of our creatures, we then kill the Chandra again. Okay, they're plussing this. I'm playing Chalice for 0. Just keep their hand as low as possible. Fortunately, this is a 2-2. We kind of want to make the Mother of Runes this turn, so if we activate this... Yeah, I think we still activate this though. And then we can go and get probably the Mox Opal here. And then when we play a land, we can play our Mother of Runes into the Chalice of the Void that's on board. Very clever. So you have to just try and grind this Chandra down, I think. This is one of the matchups where the Retrofit's Foundry that I cut from the deck would be good, because I can make a horde of 1/1s. Blood Sun. Okay, so we can't attack with Inkmoth Nexus anymore. So what we're looking for here is Umezawa's Jitte, because we can put counters on and pump it after it's gone through the Ensnaring Bridge. So we've got a plan. So we can't attack into the 2-2. We can keep making guys So we can't activate this anymore. Yeah, we're basically looking for Mazawa's Jitte is our out here. And then post-board we're going to board in our March of Otherworldly Lights so we can strip away ensnaring bridges and chalices and such. Feels like we've lost this game, to be honest. I think we just keep playing out these lands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can play out a Cauldron now. Is there any reason not to? I don't think so. So this draws us a card at least, which could draw us into the Jitte that we need. Sigarda's Aid, you're a bit late, I'm afraid. We can't get rid of this chalice. So we got 6 turns of the Chandra burning us down. So they're just playing this out so that they can keep their hand empty. Stoneforge Mystic. So this is one of the cards that we needed. So we go and get Umezawa's Jitte. And we play the Umezawa's Jitte. Caracas. It's a land, but it... Okay, so we have a plan now. So they have 1 card in hand. I attack. I can put counters on my guy. It's going to be slow and probably not good enough. So what's the emblem of this? Whenever you play a spell. Sure. So we don't have particularly long to deal with this Chandra before it ults. I'm pretty sure we're dead here. So I have cards in hand. So this is going to pop next turn. I don't think we can win this game. I think we should just concede it. It shouldn't waste our time. Like for a while they had 2 cards in hand and then 1 card in hand, so there was an option, but it just petered out as not being a thing we could do anything about. So I want these March of Otherworldly Lights, which means you can probably trim on... Pithaniel is going to be good here. I don't think we're going to need Shadow Spear necessarily. I think the Jitte is just going to be better if we need life. The Mother of Runes, they've probably got Fury in their deck, or at least in their sideboard, so we want this. They're going to have ways of removing some of our artifacts, so we can trim on those. The Ornithopter can get round Ensnaring Bridge. I'm in the market for that one. Can trim a Sword of Fire and Ice and a Hammer. I think this will do us. Is the Cauldron good enough? Like, if we blow up the Ensnaring Bridge, it doesn't take long for the Cauldron to kill them while they try and find answers. So I think we're going to run it back like this. So this opening hand plays Mother of Runes and then doesn't do anything. Alternatively, it plays Sigarda's Aid and then doesn't do anything because I would need additional mana sources. So I think we have to mulligan. This hand plays Sigarda's Aid, which is one of the ways we can get around an Ensnaring Bridge. It also has Mother of Runes. I think we'll keep this. We'll get rid of this Cauldron Complete so that we can shoot it for if we ever need it. We play this out. I think we have to play out the Mother of Runes because we at least need a creature. And we might be able to stick a Sword of Fire and Ice on it. We want to play the Mox Opal out in case they have any Chalice for 0 action. Chalice for 1? Chalice for 1, sure. So we immediately draw a 1-drop. I think peppering them for 1 is probably going to be better than holding this guy back for now. Could be mistaken, but they have an Ancient Tomb, so there's certainly a chance that they can slowly grind away their own life total. Phobia the Mirror Breaker, sure. So they have a 2-2 now. So drawing a mana source here would be good. There's not a mana source, and it's not something I can put into play because of the Chalice. So we have to just pass the turn. Feels like a number of games I lose with this deck is due to the mana. Like if this was a basic Plains, then I'd be alright. I'd have played the Sword of Fire and Ice and I equip it next turn. Then we start going to town. So we can prevent 2 damage here by blocking and then tapping our own Mother Runes, but it's only 2 damage, so I don't care enough, I don't think, for that. I don't want to just open myself up to some sort of Fury action or a Chandra. Okay, so playing another spell. And a Khan the Great Creator. Okay, I think we're about to concede this game. So we can't even put the Sword of Fire and Ice or anything, and they get to blow up our Mox Opal that wasn't doing anything anyway. Caracas. So we can play the Sword of Fire and Ice, but we can't equip it because of the Khan. So is it worth playing? I think it is worth playing. I think this game is over though. So if I play the Sigarda's Aid instead of the Mother of Runes, I'd be in the same position really. The Chalice is just too strong here. If we draw the March of Otherworldly Light, we can pitch these two to kill the Khan and then we can equip Sword of Fire and Ice, attack, and machine gun down one of their guys. So that seems like a way of winning the game. Or we can just lose again to Micros and Glatis. Sure. Got prisoned. So this deck is quite vulnerable to Chalice. Yeah. We boarded in the March by the Worldly Lights, but we need to see them. Alright. On to the next round. Okay, again, no mana in this hand, so I have to mulligan. This hand isn't spectacular, but it's fine. It's a case of do we want the Caracas or do we want the Pithing Needle as the keeps. The Pithing Needle has quite a lot of options, and we can kind of do everything our hand does without the third land, I think. So maybe we bottom the land and we play Sentinel into Paladin, and then we can start putting the Shadow Spear on the Esper Sentinel and double taxing all of their spells. It's one of these two. I think whichever one I put back I might regret it. So this is an artifact, so give us more artifacts for our Urza's Saga. This can bounce things like Thalia, which will prove a problem, so I think we put the... and play out the Esper Sentinel. Plus 10. Polluted Delta, this doesn't really tell us anything. Planes, attack for 1. And play out a Pure Steel Paladin. So our opponent could be playing... Okay, so they're playing Reanimate. So this Caracas could actually be helpful here. And they can't take the Caracas out of our hand. I assume they just go for Grizzlebrand here. That's the... Okay, yeah, so they go for the Grizzlebrand. So they're going to draw a load of cards, and they're going to probably take out some of my hand, but then I'll be able to bounce it next turn with my Caracas. Okay, so we've got the hammer, so if they play Grizzlebrand, they draw some cards and don't have any discard for my hand, then we win the game. So you can play out these two onto our Paladin, make him enormous, bounce their guy and kill them. Stealing a game 1 from Reanimate would be really helpful. Unmask. Okay, so they're going to take the hammer here. Dire Ritual. So we're probably getting an Archon of Cruelty in here as well. Oh, Sarah's Emissary. So if they go for protection from creatures, how do we win this game? I think the answer is we don't, right? Yeah. I don't think we can win this game. No, we can't beat a resolved Sema's Emissary. That's a shame. We need to concede. 4 ley lines. Seems pretty straightforward. I don't think we're going to be wanting all these Jittes, and the Shadow Spear doesn't feel useful. We just want to go relatively fast. Probably trim Mother Runes. They're not going to be killing our creatures. We obviously need to keep a density of creatures in play. So the question is, do we want some Sword of Plowshares in case they show and tell or slip something through? Because we want to be able to not just immediately die. So I think we can probably trim another one of these because we can always tutor for them. And then what we're looking at, probably a Mox Opal to give us another Sword of Plowshares. I don't think we want to trim anymore. I think we've got 2 answers in case one gets through. So at least we're drawing to something if they play the Serras. I think we'll go with this. We could also bring in the Deafening Silence to stop them, but obviously the Leyline of the Void is the better spell. So I think we're just going to keep this. I can't really ask for fair in this, can you? So I'll keep this. Put it onto the battlefield, please. Okay, so we'll play out Esper Sentinel, because that way if they dig or do anything, at least I can draw cards off of it. Then we'll play the Stoneforge, get Cauldra, and try and win as quickly as possible before they have an answer to the Leyline. So they probably have Serenity in their deck, but I think I can't afford to board out too many things and dilute my entire game plan. This could also just be a wear tear. Okay, so we're going to get to draw a card. And Inkmoth Nexus. Another Leyline. Doesn't really matter here. If we play the Inkmoth Nexus, we can attack with it if that's a thing we're in the market for next turn. So we just get the quickest way of killing our opponent that we can get, which is the Cauldra. The Sword of Fire and Ice is +4 damage, a turn this is +5 damage, so obviously drawing cards is helpful, but okay, so they've conceded. Okay, so I think we just run it back and have a Leyline and hope that's good enough. This hand has a Leyline and it makes the Saga pop. I think we have to keep this. So they might not have had an answer to Leyline because they might not have expected it out of my deck, but I assume, considering the things they saw, they probably had Serenity. Okay, so play this out. Play this out. Play this out. Next time we play the Urza Saga and the Sigarda's Age so that we can just get a hammer going as soon as possible. Now if they play Serenity this turn, then we probably lose the game. Oh no. There's a Serenity. So, what is the plan here? So this destroys all artifacts and enchantments. So it'll destroy my Urza Saga, it'll destroy my Ancient Den. So what do we do here? If we play out the Pure Steel Paladin, we can equip it with a Colossus Hammer next turn. I think we have to play out a land here. And this is the only opportunity we're really going to have to get white-white. So I think we just have to play the Pure Steel Paladin here. We're going to lose a lot of permanents next turn. But we can bash for 12. It's not great. But if I board in answers for Serenity as well as my ley lines, then I'm just not going to have a functional main deck. So I need to hopefully fade what our opponent's doing here. Now they can put a Grizzlebrand into play and I have a Caracas. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so they're going to go and get the Serras here, right? Because they think I can't beat it. But I did board in 2 Source to Plowshares. Now, if I can draw the Source to Plowshares before they have a chance to kill us, then that'd be okay. But 6 damage a turn is a lot. Okay, so we have an Ornithopter. So we play out the Esper Sentinel, play out the Colossus Hammer to draw a card. Then we, as long as I have 3 more artifacts, so let's play this out. So we have 3 artifacts. Equip to this, so that way I get a card off of every spell they play. Now the issue is they don't have to play spells, but needs must. So we can't block this anyway. So there's no point trying to put it on here. We might as well put it on here and get cards if they try and do anything else. Just need to draw Source to Plowshares. We got a few turns. Now if they play an Archon of Cruelty or something, that's going to massively change the amount of turns I have. A Grief. That also has protection from creatures, so that's changed their clock. So making this doesn't help, but making the Stoneforge Mystic does, because this gets me equipment that I can play. I think we just get a Colossus Hammer because we can cast it this turn and might be able to draw a card off of it. Put it on Ornithopter, and let's try and draw our Source of Plowshares. We have 1 more draw step. And then we are kaput. Okay, let's get another Colossus Hammer and draw a card. Is it Source of Plowshares? It is Source of Plowshares. Okay. Cast Source of Plowshares, targeting this. Okay, this. So they're on 23 here, and I have exactly 23 damage here. Oh, excellent. Okay, so we boarded in the Source of Plowshares and we drew it on the last turn. Talk about that for exciting. Whew, that's quite a game. All right, on to the final round, I think. So this hand doesn't actually do anything really. Like if I draw Colossus Hammers, it will look great, but otherwise I've just got a 0-2 and a 1-2, so I have to mulligan. So this hand can play a Colossus Hammer game. It can play a Stoneforge game. So we'll keep this. Question is, would I rather have a Mother of Runes or an Esper Sentinel, I think, because that's what has to go back here. So we can play turn 1 Esper Sentinel, turn 2 Sigarda's Age Colossus Hammer. That sounds quite good to me. I think we'll put the Mother of Runes back. And then we can rely on the Stoneforge as a backup plan. Noodle Boy. I've played Noodle Boy before and they were on Painter, Red Painter, but I've seen them on a stream playing a different deck. Might have been Bosch and Roll's stream. Island, okay. This one's something a bit different. So this will be a good card against a deck with islands in, just generally speaking. Because if you've got islands in, you're going to have Ponders and Brainstorms. Okay, so it's 8 cast. Chalice of the Void for 1. That's pretty annoying. That changes my plan quite dramatically. So we have options here. We can get Sword of Fire and Ice, or we can get Cauldra. I'm going to get the Sword of Fire and Ice, I think. Or we could get the Jitte, because they might be making a lot of Thopter tokens. I think we want the Sword of Fire and Ice, because we need more cards, I think, to get through this. Okay, so we have an Ether Spellbomb. That's going to get countered by that Chalice of the Void. That's an interesting play to me. I have no reason to play an artifact now. There's no point playing this yet because I can't equip it. We can do instant speed. So we just attack with our 1/1. We don't have to worry about Hull Breach because I have 3 mana up. So putting the... So maybe the Cauldron would have been the better name here. The better get with the Psi Master Thopterist. That is a blue creature. It can make a lot of colourless creatures though. So because we have the Stoneforge, if we draw a Pure Steel, we can steal Colossus Hammer. Sure, still getting 1 colourless guy this turn. Unless, well, I could have some more 0 drops here. Or a Thoughtcast, that's a lot of drops. And a Bauble. So we don't want them to have 1 more of these Thopter tokens, that would be a problem. So we can put the Shadow Spear onto an Esper Sentinel later as well and give it Trample, so that it can always get its activate ability going. Pure Steel Paladin here is quite a big pickup here. So we play Pure Steel Paladin. This resolves. Okay, so we can equip to this guy. Put this in. To this, draw a card. Equip for 0 on this guy. And then next time we put a hammer on him as well. So because we have so much damage next turn, it's worth just thinning out the Thopter tokens. Those Ancient Tombs are looking very pricey right now. Maybe I should have gone to the face. So these only represent 1 block, whereas this ability is 2 and it will have Trample. So they're in a bit of trouble here. Right, so they're making some more Thopters. Drawing some more cards. This is not going to really do it for them, I don't think. They do have a legend though, so Otawara is a thing they can do, and that is a colourless card. Okay, so making another Mox Opal. Getting the bits in. We're not going to block. I don't really care about that damage. So they need Otawara here. So if we activate this. Now we have a massive guy. Is this the Otawara? Sure, the Otawara. Okay, so then we play out an Urza Saga. That gets us more hammers. Play out an Esper Sentinel. Into that Chalice of the Void. That was very silly of me. So we can put a load of stuff on the Ingmoth Nexus next turn, but hitting someone for 6 life is going to be easier than hitting them for 10 poison. So most of these lists I think run 2 Otawaras, so they can't get their Ether Spellbomb back because of their own Chalice. So they're just conceding. Excellent, let's go on to the next game. So they are a Chalice deck, which means you want these March of Otherworldly Lights. They have a lot of creatures, so I'm certainly in the market for Resource Plowshares, but I don't think I can make enough slots here for that. Pithing Needle's got good options here. They're a Hercule's Recall deck, which is something we have to be aware of. So probably trim one of these sort of Fire and Ices. Trim the Colossus Hammer. I think we just have to trim one drop. Like, the way that they deal with our creatures, they might have Dismember, but mostly it's just going to be the Otawara and the Ether Spellbomb, so I don't know how much Mother of Runes is going to help us out. So I think we can at least trim on those. The Esper Sentinel is non-creature spell, so that's fine. The Shadow Spear, we need the Trample to get through our opponents. I think we can trim a Mox Opal here, and then we're just looking at trimming one of the other cards. Probably just a sort of Fire and Ice, sort of leverage our Stoneforges. I think we need the hammers and the Trample. That's how we're going to get through here. We'll try it like this. So this hand requires an additional mana source, but if it gets an additional mana source, it wins the game very quickly. I have an answer to Chalice in my opening hand, and I have a 1-drop. So I'm going to keep this on the proviso that I can draw a mana source. Okay, so we drew a mana source. This is good. It's not the white mana source we wanted, but We'll take it. So we'll play Esper Sentinel this turn, and then next turn we can play Sigarda's Aid and Urza's Saga. Yeah, Sigarda's Aid, Urza's Saga, Colossus Hammer. And then make our guy into an 11/11. It's a plan. So this turn they could cast the Chalice of the Void. Okay, so they're paying, so we're unlikely to see a Chalice of the Void this turn. Our opponent has 5 cards in hand after the Bauble trigger. Okay, so we have an Ancient Den. We'd rather have the Ancient Den or the Urza's Saga. I think if we stick to the original plan here, cast this Sigarda's Aid, cast this Colossus Hammer. Okay, so they're going to Force of Will my Colossus Hammer and they're probably not going to let me draw a card because it's got mana up. Sure. Now there's another Colossus Hammer where that came from, so that's good for us. What do they exile for it? Another Force of Will. So they probably don't have a huge glut of blue cards available to them right now. A lot of their deck is colourless, apart from like Thoughtcast, Thought Monitors, Emery and Sai. And play this out. Take this for white. Play Colossus Hammer. See if this one sticks. Another Force of Will, exiling Thought Monitor. So they have to crack this if they want to get a token here, and their token would be quite big, so I don't really want to tangle with it. It's probably not worth my time much for already lighting right now. So what we're going to do is I think we make our own Urza's Saga token, and then we get the Colossus Hammer next turn, and then we'll have 2 bodies to stick it on, or to choose from, and then we can Pure Steel Paladin follow up. We missed drawing a card by not playing the Pure Steel Paladin, but we're trading that card in for a massive guy. Not many decks can tussle with the Urza's Saga plan in the 8-cast decks, but I think we can give it a good go with our particular hand at the moment. Okay, so the Spell Bomb is a little bit annoying. So we can remove this creature if we want to with our March for the Worldly Light, but I think we can just play our own and then force them to try and race us, perhaps. Okay, so they're shrinking their guy to try and get more cards. So our guy is slightly bigger at the moment. So we'll let these go. See what we draw. And we just activate this. Go and get a Colossus Hammer. And we equip it to the Esper Sentinel and force them to bounce the Esper Sentinel rather than our massive guys. So this is lethal, so they have to bounce one of our guys. So they're probably going to bounce the Esper Sentinel. It forces me to replay it and is also the biggest creature. Fortunately, we can replay it this turn. And then next time we can Pure Steel and then Colossus Hammer something. Okay, they're just going to scoop it up. All right, so that was another 3-2 with the Hammertime deck with some slight changes. Let's have a look at the deck. So I lost some games due to some mana. Although the mana was the same as last time. I haven't changed the mana at all. Does that mean 22 lands is maybe a bit shy, especially when 4 of them are disappearing and 4 of them are colourless? Hard to say. I think the 3 Sword of Fire and Ice was possibly a bit overboard. I wanted to try it because I like the curve of Pure Steel into Sword of Fire and Ice. So we can probably trim these for another Mother of Runes. I think having more creatures was an issue. I didn't have enough bodies. Also, the issue came up of having Ornithopters in play, and then I had a Jitte, so I couldn't actually put any counters on the Ornithopter. So perhaps maybe some sort of split involving Memnites would be good, because obviously if you give these the hammer, they're not flying anymore anyway. But if you give them the Sword of Fire and Ice, they can fly. So maybe we should have this as a Memnite or a Mother of Runes. I think that's probably the options we're looking at there. Other than that, I do quite like this deck. I think it's surprisingly powerful. It does a lot of clocking very quickly and doesn't give your opponent much recourse. And the Urza's Saga backup plan is just a really solid backup plan for a lot of decks. And because you sort of throw a lot of your hand out because it's quite cheap, it means that you don't really have to take turns off of Urza's Sagaing when you want to. So with some decks, I find Urza's Saga in them. I'm playing them as a land and just using them as a land that then dies and gets me a 1 or a 0 drop. Whereas I think due to the low curve of this deck, like it's almost all 1s and 0s, it means that you actually get the Urza's Saga to pop off. Now, Chalice has proven to be a problem with this deck. We have 4 March of Otherworldly Lights. I don't really know what more we can do because we obviously can't skimp on Graveyard Hate, and then these two options are pretty solid. So I'm not sure how we can deal with this. Someone has suggested running the black and red sword, I think it is, which blows up planeswalkers and artifacts. So maybe that's something we could have here. So swap one of these out for the black and red sword so we can go and get it when we need it and blow up a Chalice main deck. Obviously, we discovered that we lose to a Sarah's Emissary in game 1, but against Reanimator, most decks should be losing game 1 anyway. I think the game 1 percentage for Reanimator is really, really high. So I think worrying about losing that game 1 isn't really an issue. Anything else to say about it? Not really, but I'm definitely going to play this again. I'm really enjoying this. Overall, I would say this deck is still powerful. I think not having the Nettle Cyst wasn't an issue. Yes, it is a thing that comes in with a creature, but I think the card is not necessarily good enough to justify its inclusion, because you never really want to find it, and you'd rather just have cheaper creatures so that you can curve into playing Colossus Hammer on them. So instead of having a big 3-mana spell, I think it's better to just have the cheaper creatures. So I think Mother of Runes is probably something I want to look at along with the Memnite. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.